My name is Shay Banon.
So my name is Uri Bones.
My name is Simon, and I'm a co-founder of Elastic or Elasticsearch. The company was called in the beginning.
I guess the way that I got involved in Elasticsearch was by writing the first few lines of code at around 2009, open sourcing Elasticsearch in 2010, working on it quite a bit for 2 years, and then being one of the four founders of Elastic in 2012.
How did I get involved? It started just the same way. I guess Simon and Shai, we went through the open source community around Lucene. I don't remember the year I started playing around with Lucene, but at some point it was clear that I did some, for some time I did the solar as well, and at some point it became clear that something better needs to come, because the state of solar and Lucene actually back then wasn't that great. I I got to know Simon through the community, and Shai, I got to know through Lucene as well, not necessarily through the Lucene in development, but he built in one of the frameworks he built in the past, Compass, was around Lucene, and I was using it, and we got to know each other through that, and kept in touch over the years. And then at some point, all of us tried to build something around Lucene that somewhat resembles what Elasticsearch did. Shai was by far the most advanced an advanced phase in that point, but we still figured that it would be best to join forces together with Steven and drive Elasticsearch as the main product as a company.
How did I get involved into this? In 2004, I started to work on an open source project called Apache Lucene, which is, as most of you know, the basis of Elasticsearch, or the core, the engine. I did that for almost 10 years, until I also got involved into conferences. And with two others, I started a conference in Berlin called Berlin Buzzwords, which also happened to be the first time that Shay Banon spoke about Elasticsearch at the first edition of that event in 2010. And this is how I knew Shay. At the same time, I got involved into a company called J-Team at that time, who was run by Steven Schulman, the former CEO of Elastic. And one of my colleagues was Uri Bones, the other co-founder. And this is how we actually all got together. Uri kind of like knew Shay from the early days or from school. I don't actually remember if that's from school. Anyway, we all four got together and thought, look, I think it's time for another search company. And this is how I basically got involved in Elastic or Elasticsearch.
I think you're still the #1 committer, right?
There's a chance that I might steal the #1 committer. Yeah. The first 2 years after I open sourced it, I quit my job and did it for full time. So worked on it every day for many hours. Ended up producing quite a quite a large amount of code. And obviously after we started the company, I continued to contribute to Elasticsearch itself. I don't know, I don't know if that's like a feature or a bug that I'm still the #1 committer at Elasticsearch. I've been fascinated with the power of search and how intuitive it feels for users once they, you give them any type of data, and the fact that they now have a search box and they can search across any type of data. Ever since I tried to write my first search application, being a recipe app for my wife in 2005 or so. So the goal with Elasticsearch was to try to build a system that can store any type of data and unleash to a degree the power of search across any type of use case. And and the flexibility and hopefully the ease of use and intuitiveness that search has, I just tried to bring it to any type of application.
And that was the vision to start the company, or was there more to it?
I think the company was more, that was around at least Elasticsearch. So Elasticsearch, the project, that's why I sat down and started to write the code and open sourcing it, really trying to put it at the hands of as many people as possible, and try to create a community around it. Obviously, when you form a company, that's another level of commitment. The goal with the company was, first of all, to create a home for almost like professional development around Elasticsearch, right? It's like I've done open source for years before, and one of the things that I'd love to be able to create, if I can, was a home for developers to actually get paid while they do open source, or while they do free and open. And we created a company to try to do exactly that. The first things that we did when we started the company was to hire people from the Elastic community, developers, contributors to Elasticsearch, people from the ecosystem, not only Elasticsearch itself, client library developers, developer advocates, documentation, community management, things along those lines. And we even extended to a broader set of our community. Rashid joined us, and we doubled down on Kibana as an open source project that we can go and develop. Jordan with Logstash, Tudor and Monica with Beats, and we have many stories like that where we try to create a home for people to develop this, basically these various projects that all revolve around Elasticsearch. I think the other part with a company is that you always want to build a company that will be a wonderful place for people to work at. And that was another goal of Elastic, just to create a place where employees will be happy to work at the company, a company that takes care of their employees, and to a degree, a community of employees, the same way that we care and invest in our community of developers in our ecosystem.
The goal, Look, I don't think there was a goal that you could write down or talk about. I think it was time for the community around Elastic or Lucene, the whole open source search community, to take the next step and professionalize the products and how we interact with the products, the ecosystem, a little bit away from a pure only open source, no commercial involvement. And it just felt right at that point to found a company. I worked as a consultant for a long time, and the amount of work was overwhelming, which involved Lucene, Solar, and also starting to involve Elasticsearch, which was really young at that time, about 1.5 years old. And it just felt like it's the right thing to do for all of us. The business opportunity that laid ahead of us, or that we even go IPO at some point, was not really part of the thinking process, at least on my end. And that is, that's basically what I can say about having a goal about founding Elastic.
It was mainly due to the fact that we've been working with Lucene for quite some time by then, and we knew the power of search. We knew the power of inverted index as a data structure driving search engines. Yet it didn't seem to be very prominent, and I think that mostly because it wasn't really accessible to a lot of users. And we believe we can make it accessible and really change the way people deal with data and access data. So when Shay released Elasticsearch, the first time he made it public, I think it was very clear. The best thing that he did is actually hide the whole Lucene complexities behind a very simple, intuitive, very user-friendly API, and that made it accessible. And it was just about taking this technology and driving it forward and show the world and try to actually promote it and try to show the world what power they can have in their hands once they use something like Elasticsearch. And I think that today, when you look at also what Elastic sells as services and products, you kind of have a glimpse a little bit about how far you can take it in so many different directions. So yeah, that was something that we always had in mind, and our goal was to execute around that idea. So I don't know. Today it's a bit different, different ecosystem, different times, different market, I would say, out there. But when we started, if you would tell me that will exist 10 years, I'll just take it. I don't know. We didn't know. I didn't know. I knew that we had something big in our hands, technology-wise. And a great product, an awesome product. Of course, there was a lot of work to be done, but the potential was, at least it seemed to us, limitless. Next to that, you have to execute it right. So, and there are so many factors that kind of influence the execution, which are also not necessarily under your control. So when we started, we knew that we have a good chance of actually executing our plans and following our dreams and what have you, but you still operate under a cloud of uncertainty to some degree. I cannot say that, I knew where I'll be or where Elastic will be in 5 years or 10 years, but I certainly hope that it will be more or less what Elastic is today, right? There's this core technology that we build everything on top of. We spend a lot of time just focusing on that core technology, and around that building a whole ecosystem of products that really target different call it verticals or different problems to solve, but it's all based on this same technology, same stack. I think that was our ideas from day one. And I guess we all hope that it will indeed fulfill itself, and it did to a large degree. I mean, there are things some things could have been done better, some things were executed perfectly. But all in all, I'm super happy with where we Elastic is today, and yeah, it's definitely in the direction where we all hoped it to be.
Well, 10 years later, if you ask me the same question, what I think is going to be happening in 10 years, I don't know. But back then, I really thought we can build a company that is sustainable and that could last for 10 years. It was a lot about the culture and what kind of culture we can establish and carry on for the next years. And I think we did a good job. I personally never thought we would grow that big, like a couple of thousand people. That's quite impressive. It still sounds unreal to me today. But yeah, like it's not just the people and the culture; it's also the products and everything around the core product of Elasticsearch with everything we have now, it's insane, and nobody really envisioned that, or at least I don't think anybody envisioned that 10 years ago.
It's always hard to imagine, 10 years later, you start to think about like very broad strokes. But, I think the first part was realizing the power of search across any type of data, right? It's like almost like a metaphysical aspects, help people find what they're looking for. And I think I'm very proud of what we've done, over the years. The fact that search has become such a powerful tool that can be used in so many different use cases, just like crazy use cases, together with the obvious ones, together with ones that, to be honest, I didn't think that we'll get into, like logging or security or others. That's wonderful to do. And it's wonderful to see our community and the whole ecosystem just taking Elasticsearch, putting it at the midst of what they're doing and using it to help build wonderful products and wonderful other projects, if you will. And not a day goes by when I'm not talking to someone and they say, "Hey, like, we're using Elasticsearch internally," and that's wonderful to see. Like, that's so humbling to see so many users see value in that. I think the other part was to try to be part of a movement that happens always in technology around innovation and continuous expansion and improvement in how we do things, right? It's like I'm thinking about the role that we played through our products, through our community, for example, in the DevOps movement. I love bringing communities together and being part of this movement of developers and operations coming together, learning how to work through products, through social norms, and us helping promote that all the way up to observability today, which is like a whole big umbrella term, if you will, around everything that we do around making sure that your like applications are up and running to a degree. And that's something that is just fun to see and fun to do. And the impact is so big across companies, across ecosystems, across products and projects. Same thing that we're trying to do now and help foster the same type of movement that is happening in the security world, between developers, security professionals, and operations people. Like, all of these things are wonderful to see. I think products are at the middle of this movement, right? You need to have products that can support all of the various requirements and collaborations that are needed between these tools, but also openness, community, transparency. Like, if you use products that value these type of characteristics, I think it ends up bringing segments within companies that you thought would never collaborate, or it's very hard for them to collaborate, to actually work together. And that's amazing to see. I think the last bit is our company. I'm very proud of the company that we created, the culture that we have, the humble and ambitious, our source code, how we treat each other, how that end up extending to our community of users and developers, how that ends up inspiring us internally within Elastic. Like, I love seeing that happening in action, and I'm very proud of the company itself that we've built and everything where we are. One last thing, I think, I don't know how many people know it, but at the foundation of open source, we're also a very distributed company. We have employees in 40 different countries. We're probably the largest company in the world today that works in a completely distributed way. Obviously, we still have offices. So this is not like everybody work from home, but the root and the first principles of the company are extremely distributed. And, I'm happy that we've been helping lead the charge in terms of what it means to build successful distributed companies, because I think that's the way forward. And obviously, sadly, due to COVID, this has become a reality for many companies across the world today. It's hard to attribute it to, I think, just one thing. I think success is shared across so many big and small decisions that we made along the way. It's hard to pinpoint into one of them. It's one of those things where I can't think of Elastic not being distributed. So obviously that's a major part of Elastic, the company. I can't think of Elastic not engaging with our community of developers and users. So obviously that's a big reason for our success. The continuous investments that we make across the free and open ecosystem, the things that we started as a company, movements, products, forks, project, like it's amazing to see everything that is happening around us. And I think that's a big part of the success of Elastic. The culture of the company is a big part of it. I also think that at a very almost like fundamental existential level, it's fun to think about helping people find what they're looking for, right? It's like we will always be searching for something. And the ability to go and take that core first principle of need and being able to go and try to solve it. It's a really tough problem, but go and try to solve it and apply it to specific use cases and let users run with their imagination in their own amazing use cases itself. Like that's fun to see. And I think us trying to solve that core first principle aspect is one of the reasons why the company is successful. And I think that's one of the reasons why the company can stand the test of time. A lot of things seem simple in retrospect, but the act of sitting down and writing Elasticsearch was an extremely tough decision, at least on me personally, because I was doing open source before. I had an open source project before called Compass, and I knew how much work went into it. Right, it's like weekends and nights, and I have this unhealthy sense of responsibility probably to any single user of anything that I wrote or did, like in Compass in that day. So I ended up spending weekends and nights and hours just investing in the community and trying to help answer questions and fix bugs and help users that are depending on something that I created. Like I have a strong sense of responsibility for it. And that was a really tough decision to sit down and write Elasticsearch in 2009, because you know that you're signing up for years of the same, if that makes sense, and even more. And I think that at least for me, the fact that I did end up doing it, and everything that came as a result of it, because that was one of the hardest decisions that I had, at least, especially with a family and a kid, and then a kid on the way, and tons of tough decisions. I view it as a very strong, very individual, personal success on a very, very personal level. I think beyond that, the amazing community, everything that came as a result of it, the community that grew out of it, how the community acts and operates in a very respectful way. The company that we ended up forming around it, the friends, the amazing, the criticality of Elasticsearch. It's like I what I try to do most of the time is just to sit down and talk to customers and users and listening what they do and try to figure out how to do it better. Elasticsearch is at the heart of so many critical systems across the world today, from tracking vaccines for COVID and helping even do analysis around the effectiveness of the vaccine, just in the context of COVID, for example, to helping protect it. There's so many proud moments that you have around the fact that you ended up building a product, not me specifically, but the company, the community ended up building a product that just created such a net add to the world that I think that that's something that I'll carry with me for years, and that's a huge personal success for me.
I guess you want to hear the good ones. I have a couple of bad ones. This is a very, very funny moment, actually, that I and a lot of people remember in the company. There was a person who had trouble installing Java, and he was always telling him that he doesn't have the runtime that is required for Elasticsearch to run. I don't know, maybe he had Java 5 and he's Java 7, or Java 7 and he needed Java 9 or something like this. But it was a very obvious error, and we tried to help this person on GitHub, and he kept on pushing and pushing and pushing that he has installed it correctly and the product is broken and so forth. And at some point, he told me that he's programming since I was a blink in my father's eyes, and I should go and not come back. And then he called me Junior, and since then I had the nickname of Junior in the company. It was kind of very funny in retrospect. The funniest part of this is that I haven't even read his reply, and the entire company knew about this Junior thing, which was a kind of embarrassing at that moment, but a very memorable moment.
Yeah, like 5-10 years, it's a big one. I'll touch on some of the aspects that I said in the beginning. I think the first part is helping people find what they're looking for. It's very existential, and I think when you're starting to look, and when the horizon is beyond 3 years or 4 years, you really want to go back to first principles. It's like you want to go back to the beginning, like Vizini said, and figure out what is the reason that you're building the product that you're doing, why you're engaging with the community, why does it all matter? And that's the thing that I love the most. It's like years ago, my trick when I worked in places was just putting search boxes in applications that I worked at, and you could see people's face light up because suddenly they could find their trade confirmation. When I worked in the banking industry, their transactions. When I worked in the online banking industry, and I worked in London for a few years, and banking was the only thing because startups was not a thing back then in London. So like that's fun. Like that's a lot of fun, and now obviously went to a level where you build the products that allow people to put search boxes everywhere. And this is the metaphorical search box, right? It's like it doesn't have to be a search box. It can be a system that tracks vaccine or help protect vaccine delivery of vaccines. And those don't necessarily have a search box, but they're still using the power of search to power all of these so like critical and important use cases. And I think that if we focus on that, that would be amazing, because that means that we don't only focus on things like enterprise search and helping users find their missing Google Doc or Slack message that they never knew they wrote. Hopefully they know that they wrote it. Or within their workplaces, especially as we become distributed, helping e-commerce side be successful because they help their online customers find their items more easily, helping operations and developers manage their really complicated architecture and deployments and microservices and what have you, and manage and make sure that it's running healthy all the time, helping security professionals and threat hunters engage in this like super critical and important mission of protecting companies and people from attack. Like that's important. But maybe there will be more down the road. I'm sure that there will be more down the road. I'm sure there's more in each one that we're doing. So, and I think search has a big place in each and every one of them. I think the other part is, beyond software and products, there's social movements, right? It's like I said, like one of the proudest things that I have is around the DevOps movement. And I've been in the industry for years where operations and developers didn't talk to one another, right? And there was a lot of mistrust between operations and developers people. And then the DevOps movement happened, and many people helped make it a reality. I think our products played a big part in it. I think open source, free and open, played a big part of it. I think the concepts of communities and openness and trust-based development and things along those lines were critical to the creation of the DevOps movements, and I think we're all better as a result of it. Because we got people to work together. Like, we should be trying to work together as a team, because good things happen when we do, versus what it was before. I think there's a lot of opportunity of being able to do it in the security space and bring security to the whole organization and vice versa. So that's all of these movements. I'd love for Elastic to continue to play a big part in helping make them happen through the first principles of openness, transparency, respect, trust. Like that, those are strong and super critical, and they make a big difference. And I think the last bit is just continue to build a great company. It's like a company that support the employees, company that employees are happy to work at, company that the employees feel like the company has their back. Like that's something that I'm very, very proud of. And our company is a community, and our community of employees extends in the first aspects of how we treat our community more broadly is how we treat our community of employees as well. And I want to make sure that we continue to do that.
I think it's very hard to pinpoint one thing in terms of contribution if you've been part of a community for like this one for 10 years and then another 10 years in the Lucene community. I think the persistence of being around and being helpful and being kind most of the time, and or being able to apologize if you weren't kind, which also happens. Like, nobody can tell me is always kind in 20 years. There's days like these and days like that. I think that is the biggest contribution, being a role model for other people, helping people to develop a good feature, even they work for a company that is potentially a competitor. Like, there's a feature in Lucene that wasn't really important for Elasticsearch at that point. And it was built by 3 people that work for a big competitor for us. But I looked at the feature, and it was like mainly happening in one area where I felt very comfortable with in the Lucene code base, and spent a ton of time on over the years. And I figured, like, this is not the way I think we should do that. But instead of like blocking the feature or talking people into doing something else, I took over the development and helped and guided folks to do the feature properly and do it solid. And it changed the way that the competitor uses Lucene, and has better machine utilization, better search performance dramatically, which is not necessarily, like a thing everybody would do, but as a role model, I think in an open source community, you have to wear these hats and that hat. And if you want to do that properly, you need to make these decisions. And I think this, if you can be like this is a huge contribution for the community.
There's a lot of personal support involved in running a company, I think. And I want to believe that, I was one of those, I had an open ear for people who want to talk with me about things, about advice, get my advice on how to deal with things in the company, not necessarily on a personal level, because, people, I'm not there I wasn't there necessarily to give, I'm not smarter than any other person in the company in that sense, but around how to deal with the cultural aspects of the company. Yeah, definitely had a lot of conversations, good conversations, long conversations with a lot of people in the company. And I see that as a contribution as well.